With the Taliban expected to announce their new cabinet anytime now, the international community has once again urged them to meet the expectations of the Afghans as well as the world for a modern and inclusive government. There are also calls for investigating the death of civilians at the hands of U.S. forces and their allies in the past 20 years. Will the global pressure work on the Taliban? And what is the new scandal about U.S. President Joe Biden's asking the deposed Afghan president to lie to the world about the latest situation in Afghanistan? Joining me today are Lyu Xiang, Research Fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences from Hong Kong, and also in Beijing, current affairs commentator Einar Tangen. Einar, let me go to you, but before I do, I want you to hear this. China has spoken once again about the Taliban government. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin made this statement. Let's listen in.
The international community is closely following developments, including the formation of a new government in Afghanistan. China sincerely hopes that all parties in Afghanistan will echo the aspiration of the Afghan people and shared expectation of the international community, build an open and inclusive political structure, adopt moderate and prudent domestic and foreign policies, make a clean break with all terrorist groups, and live in good terms with other countries, especially its neighbors.
Einar, there are so many appeals, calls for the Taliban to be, inclusive, to be representative. How will the Taliban handle all these pressures?
Well, it's hard to say. They're going to be announcing their new cabinet. There are very few surprises. The major players have been included. What's not clear is how this is all going to work. There's still at least 10 very active terrorist organizations, including EITM, which is the one that's trying to have an independent Xinjiang.
Yeah.
So the question is, will they be able to control not only the country, but these groups, and how will they deal with them? They helped in terms of they were part of the resistance at the time, but I don't think they want them around. Remember, when it came to the very beginning, this all happened because of the 9/11 situation and them going after Osama bin Laden, and that is what touched us off this 20-year war. I don't think they want to repeat that.
Mr. Liu, what do you think? How will the Taliban, on one hand, handle the pressure, and whether or not they will listen to the appeals of regional stakeholders, for example, Pakistan, China, the United States, and Russia?
Yes, actually, I agree with Einar that it's not easy for Taliban to rule this country, but we have to we need to see that they are very different from them after 20 years ago. In late 90s, when they took over the power, the key Taliban members are 20-something boys, and then now after 20 years, they are definitely mature. And in the past 20 years, they fought for their survival. They also got much experience in the grassroots society government. So now we can expect that the Taliban is making efforts to make progress in Afghanistan, but it's not easy. We know the international communities, especially these neighbor countries, and Russia. Russia is not far from Afghanistan, and these countries have to provide incentive for Taliban to form a new government, and which is open and inclusive.
Mr. Liu, let me stay with you. A media quote that is going somewhat viral is a quote offered by Chairman Mao, and he was quoted by China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin, where Chairman Mao said, "Afghanistan is a heroic country and has never surrendered. China and Afghanistan are friendly countries. China does not want to harm Afghanistan, and Afghanistan does not want to harm China." And of course, these later statements were made by the Foreign Ministry spokesperson. What message does that send?
Yeah, actually, Chairman Mao is is right in in making the judgment that Afghanistan is a heroic country. We know that in history they defeated 3 times the British invasion into the country, and then they also they were successful in defeating the Russia invasion, and now after 20 years they also defeated the United States, the strongest, the United States and some of the NATO countries. So they are really they are not easy, and they have the wisdom of how to fight with great powers. So now I really appreciate they got independence again, and we hope all together with the efforts of the neighboring countries, they will make Afghanistan a peaceful and a stable new country.
You know, the Chinese diplomats are also making calls. It was, first of all, Geng Shuang, China's representative at the United Nations, asking countries to investigate America's war crimes in Afghanistan. And later on, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said the public data shows over 47,000 Afghan civilians died by April 2020, since the war, so-called war on terror began. And also in the past 20 years, lots of civilian casualties, people suffered. Einar, do you see this sort of investigation happening at all?
No, I don't. The United States has not been very good about acquiescing to ICC, the International Criminal Court jurisdiction. They've said on numerous occasions that they have no intention of subjecting their sovereignty to any other cause. There were questions that were asked about the Iran war, what happened in Iraq, many places in the Middle East, Africa, of course, South America. There have never been held account. It's very difficult to believe that this will change.
But what is in their favor? They would go all out for it. For example, the so-called South China Sea arbitration in The Hague in 2016.
Well, as history has testified, the U.S. is better about telling others what rules they should apply, which rules they should obey, than actually obeying those rules themselves.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk about the security, rather the economic situation, the economic plight facing Afghanistan. Mr. Lyu, we all know that Afghanistan faces an economic hardship and also a humanitarian crisis. It still has about $10 billion in assets, but unfortunately these assets are mostly outside the country, especially in the U.S., and they have been frozen. An Afghan central bank official said the U.S. should unfreeze some of the assets, while the IMF should provide some limited credit. Are such requests reasonable?
Yes, actually, both the United States and other international organizations should unfreeze the asset of the Afghanistan government in short time. We can foresee a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, especially the Afghanistan people will face a very hard winter, which is coming soon. We can expect that they will face a serious inflation and a shortage of food. So not only the United States, but also all the surrounding countries need to prepare for assistance to the Afghanistan people in this winter. And China, Pakistan, and Iran, these countries have to do something for securing the safe passages, especially on the land roads, on how to provide food and other necessities to Afghanistan people in the winter.
You know, Einar, government classified information can leak, and they do leak. The transcript of a phone call made by Joe Biden in July to then President Ashraf Ghani was obtained by news media. It shows Biden urging Ghani to lie about the situation in Afghanistan in order to convince the international community about how maybe peaceful it was. How do you look at that?
Well, it's an old political trick. When you're in the midst of defeat, instead of admitting it, you just declare victory and say, I'm out of here.
And then, Mr. Lyu, did this phone call, the leak of it, surprise you anyway?
Yeah, actually, I read it. It's very interesting. It's called, in the terms of the United States government, it's called perception management. So the trick is that perception management is for cheating others, and in this case, President Biden seems to have cheated himself. It's an interesting trick.
I mean, really, what is the sentiment in the United States, Einar? I mean, because Mitch McConnell, for example, the Senate now minority leader, criticized Biden, saying the pullout of Afghanistan is the biggest foreign policy failure, as if it wasn't launched by his party's own president, George Bush 43. Do you think people in the United States, the policy strategists, could maybe understand that this wasn't a decision made by Biden, and while it could be a policy, tactical failure, it can be a strategic, smart decision?
Well, politics aside, I mean, both parties are going to, one claims victory, the other one claims defeat. Quite frankly, it was mismanaged. The question is what happens in the midterm elections. This misinformation campaign stuff, as my colleague has put it, is just routine. In terms of perception, Americans are happy to be out of Afghanistan. What they're concerned about is that the leaving was mismanaged. It has really put a dent in Biden's credibility in terms of his ability to handle things. Let's see if they remember that in the midterms.
We'll have 20 seconds left. Mr. Lyu, how will Biden's decision in Afghanistan be remembered in history?
Okay, in the past 50 years, Biden has built himself as a nice man and an honest person. And now, actually, he got his new image. He's a loser and a liar. In the foreseeable future, he cannot get rid of this new image.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lyu, and thank you, Einar.